it wouldn't let me in, so on the phone here.
Okay, great. Okay, we're now streaming on YouTube, so I'll ask for someone to, I'm going to call the meeting to order. So if we can have, I can't remember, do I need a motion? No, I do not need a motion. And just to note that we do have 6 members of the task force. I count 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I thought I counted 6. 1, 2, 3. No, we do. We have 6 members, so we have quorum. So can I have a motion to adopt the agenda, please? Okay, seeing Councillor Richardson and a seconder. Linda Knight. Oh, sorry, Councillor Ashman, we'll get you next time. Linda got her hand up there. So moved by Councillor Richardson and seconded by Linda Knightham. And all in favor? Okay, Councillor Ashmore, are you comfortable with the agenda?
Yep.
Okay. Are there any declarations of pecuniary interest this morning? No, seeing none. Okay, so now we need a motion. The minutes of the last meeting were circulated by Holly. And so if I can have a motion to accept the minutes from the last meeting. And I see Pam with her hand up. Do we have a seconder? Marina, thank you. And is there any discussion on the minutes from the last meeting? I'm seeing some shaking of the heads. Okay. All right, so all in favor? Okay, that is carried. I didn't see any business arising from the minutes. Did any members of the task force note anything that they wanted to, in business arising, that they felt should be on the table this morning? No, okay. So we'll move directly to the funding working group update. So as I said, Heather Kirby had sent her regrets for today's meeting and said that Councillor Dunn was was prepared to give an update. Is there another member of the funding working group who could give us an update?
I'm on that, but Councillor Dunn would have a more up-to-date summary.
Mm-hmm. Is there anyone else on that task group?
We put together a spreadsheet, and I think we had a spreadsheet sent to us there on the various funding sources.
I'll just access an email I had from Heather. Which might also, let me just see if it was here. So Heather did send me an email on last Tuesday that I guess it was shortly after the funding opportunities group had met that day. And what she indicated was that the group had decided it was best to wait until the results from the gaps analysis survey were in, so that they could tailor the recommendations from that working group regarding funding. Does that fit with what you recall, Councillor Ashmore?
Yeah, I think so. The thing was to get it to Mark Pankhurst in time, and he was putting it together, I believe it was, and then I think Heather sent that out. Okay. But there were a few additions to it, so I assume they were added to the list.
We've just had someone else join. Who joined the call just now?
Yeah, it's Pat here. I'm waiting on the Zoom to be signed in, but I just thought I'd better phone in case there's some issues.
Oh, hi Pat. I don't know. Some of us are on Zoom, but Councillor Ashmore also had trouble with Zoom this morning. Are you able to
Okay.
participate in the meeting just by phone then?
Oh, yeah, I'm good that way, yep.
Okay, well, that's great. We'll show that you've joined the meeting, and perfect timing, because Heather Kirby said that you were going to give us an update on the funding working group.
I can do that. I can certainly do it from the city portion. The chess fund monies will all, okay, so there's 5 or 6 of them. And each one of them are individually tied to the communities where they started. And that was done by contract with Hydro when it was first signed. So Lindsay Chess Fund monies can only be spent in Lindsay, Bobcaygeon and Bobcaygeon, Fenelon Falls, and so on. That's not a huge issue, but most of them are tied to, there's 2 that have committees, one being the Bobcaygeon Committee and the Lindsay Committee, which make recommendations to council on how to spend it. I think they're both tied into capital expenditures. Certainly the Lindsay one is. But that could be changed. Those are our council rules, and any rule that council made, council can change. So that's not a big issue. It's just a matter of going to council and making a recommendation. Now, Craig was going to participate in our next meeting. I don't know whether it was this one here or maybe the next meeting of the funding sources. There are 2 smaller funds. There's a 50-50 fund and a community partnership fund, which also have smaller amounts of money available, and they would go through the director of community and buildings. Anyway, they would go through Craig's department. Now, council, the amounts of money that are in it are relatively small, but council can always add money to that if they need to. So that's the update as best I can think right off the top of my head on city funding. And if you have any questions, I'm more than happy to try and answer them.
Okay, does anyone have any questions for Councillor Dunn?
I have a question for him. Would that be coming? Would you be putting a memo to council for next week's council meeting, or is that?
No. Right now, the biggest problem is we have no idea what we want as far as money goes. We don't know how much we're looking for, and we haven't identified. So we haven't identified the needs. So okay. We have to identify needs first, and then I'm assuming that the council will be on board to support us. But our biggest holdback right now, we had a meeting with the Lindsay Chess Fund, and they're more than happy to jump on board and support us. In fact, they passed a motion to that effect. But once again, we're not in a position to ask for something because we don't know what we're looking for yet.
Okay.
Okay. Are there any other questions for Pat? Okay. And so we're going to move. That's great. I guess we need a motion to accept the update from the funding working group. Can I have someone move that? That would be Councillor Richardson, and a seconder, Marina. Okay, and all in favor?
Yes.
Yep. Good.
Great. Thank you. We're now moving then to item 7, which is the gaps assessment working group update, and Marina is going to provide that, and it will also in the process, I think, give the group a bit more understanding of the timing of when we're going to have some results from the survey. So over to Marina, please.
Okay, thank you. Everybody can hear me okay?
Mm-hmm.
So we did have a meeting on July 27th with the working group, and mostly we focused on the survey that was to be sent out that would query various agencies and community partners on their needs and anything related to COVID to do with HR, funding, and service delivery. Obviously, there was a long weekend in between, so we did manage to finalize the survey the week of our meeting. Thank you to Brenda. And it was circulated on August the 4th, just checking my calendar there, which was the Tuesday after the long weekend. Some of our members of the working group then followed up with personalized emails to various tables that they sit at and community partners that they work with to try and encourage participation in the survey. Because of course, as many of you know, sometimes we get inundated with surveys and it's easy to ignore them. So we try to encourage people to participate as best we can. The survey is supposed to be open until the 21st. And we were hoping that perhaps Brenda, and I don't want to put her on the spot, but if she's aware of what the sort of feedback has been thus far and the participation rate, then we thought we would take it from there to see whether we would need to extend the survey or provide additional follow-up to encourage participation. So if Brenda has that information, that would be excellent.
Yes, I have the results so far from the survey. Would you like the details or just a high level? I can share my screen and take you through some of the information.
I think that would be very helpful if everybody else is okay. Now, recognizing that obviously the two participants on the phone would need additional explanation on top of just the screen.
Okay. Okay. So we have not had a huge response so far. We've had 11 responses to date, and that includes one received this morning. Employees of organizations looks like between 20 to 49 is the purple, and 1 to 4 is yellow. So those are the highest. 27% have 1 to 4, 36% have 20 to 49. And then we've got a few at 100 plus. So that's, and then how many clients do they normally serve? We're looking at the largest with 36% being 250 to 499. And then second at 27% is 1,000 to, or sorry, 5,000 plus. So we asked what human resource challenges the agencies are facing. And the highest here in the green is health and mental well-being supports for staff. And then with 4 responses each tied, staff are anxious about returning to work based on the continued health threat. And other, so we'll have details on the other in the full report. This is just a summary, so we won't have that full report quite yet. And then staff are unable to fully return to work. 3 agencies have that concern. So then we asked them to tell us about their experience with implementing public health measures. And this was a Likert scale from definitely disagree all the way up to definitely agree. So definitely disagree is in blue, definitely agree is in green, everything else is sort of in the middle. And so this is quite interesting, I thought. There were a number of organizations sort of at opposite ends of this. So guidelines from public health are easy to understand. 4 definitely agreed, and there were no definitely disagreeing to that. So we had a few that somewhat disagreed. We can easily access appropriate PPE. 3 definitely disagreed, 3 somewhat agreed. So again, either sides. Costs related to PPE are reasonable. No, 4 people said definitely disagree with that. More on the negative than the positive for that one. Cost for office infrastructure reconfiguration, a lot in the middle on that, neither agreeing or disagreeing. And when we look at the comments, we'll probably understand a little bit more about that, whether agencies haven't looked into that formally yet or are just in the midst of looking at how to reconfigure their space. And then when asked if they have the resources available to ensure that public health measures are being adhered to, it was really split. So 4 definitely disagreed and 4 definitely agreed. So again, we're on either ends of the spectrum with that. So here are the breakdown of those questions: implementing public health measures, So definitely agree. So this is just showing it in a different way, might be a little easier for people to see. Costs related to PPE. So apparently PPE and cost to keep staff safe in organizations is a huge concern. And here's the office infrastructure reconfiguration, such as plexiglass. So a lot in the middle with that one. And then the resources available. So then we asked about funding and how your funding or revenue has been impacted. 6 out of the 11 say it's decreased, 4 say it has remained as before, and 1 agency has had it increase. If the funding decreased, we asked what areas. So the green is government funding, and then we have 5 responses for private donors, fundraising events, and user fees. And then 1 had an other, where we'll have details separate on that. And then if the funding is increased, in what areas? So the 1 agency that had it increased, they said it increased in government funding, private donors, and other. So that's the snapshot. We did ask a lot of very open-ended questions, and in order to ensure the agency's privacy, I haven't shared them on this report at this point, but I will be providing a full report to the task force with all of those responses. If it's helpful to the working group, I can do a report today and send that to you so you can start going through the responses we've received to date, or if you'd like to wait till the end. So we have only received 11, so we might want to do another push out to agencies to remind them that the deadline is on the 21st.
Yeah, so I would suggest, thank you very much for that, Brenda, that perhaps we do send a message to the working group members, just asking them again if there's anyone that they can reach out to encourage them to participate in the survey, to please do so. But I don't think that it's really necessary to have a full report at this time. I just don't think there's been sufficient responses to warrant that, and we'll wait closer to the end if that's okay. Okay. Does anybody have any questions?
Linda?
Surprise.
I have one.
So I'm a little, I just want to make sure that we have a plan, and maybe this is more under engagement strategy, but it directly relates to this survey. So I'm going to bring it up now. Just around, we know the survey closes on August 21st. And we did talk as a working group about the idea that we may need to extend that. And I always get very nervous about the idea of coming up with a really comprehensive response plan if we have an incomplete data set. So I think we really are going to need to make a decision closer to the 21st around who has responded. Do we have a robust response because we really do within who we're putting it out to, we do have various sectors almost that are within the group that we've sent it out to. And so I think we want to make sure that we have a good fulsome response from all of those various sectors before we make decisions on how we move forward. So I just want to make sure that before we close that survey that we're all feeling comfortable as a working group anyway, that we have a good response rate from all of the different sectors that we put that out to. And I also wonder if we're not getting response, we go back to that list that we were a little concerned we didn't have all the appropriate contacts for, but I think we were hopeful that we would get them, and make sure that we have that the folks that should be responding to the survey, we've got that accurate information. So that was a whole jumble of stuff, and I'll just leave it there and clarify anything I need to. Thank you.
Thanks, Linda. Perhaps on that, Brenda, would it be possible if you sent out just a list of the respondees to the working group, and then we can kind of get a sense of who else we need to hound to make sure that we get them at the table?
Yes, I can do that. I'll get that to you today.
Perfect. And then I know we had a question on the phone as well.
Yes, I think it was Councillor Ashmore.
Yes, thanks. Just a question to Brenda on the PPE. Brenda, are you referring to the EMS or the Ross Memorial, or where was the most urgent need? And also, did the CAO's office, I thought they were sort of organizing it, getting the funding for it and making sure that everybody had the PPE that they needed, but where is the greatest need right now?
Well, actually, this is from the organization's perspective. So everyone that filled out the survey is having difficulty affording the PPE for their staff and in their organization. So now that the public health rules have come out about what is required in order to open your workplace and interact with the public, obtaining that PPE and having it be affordable for the organization seems to be the issue.
Okay, thanks.
So just for the record, because I've just had to undertake this task for the Ministry of Health. So since all of this started in the middle of March, Kawartha North Family Health Team, and keeping in mind we're a very small team with very few staff, has spent just over $13,000 in additional PPEs, cleaning, sanitizers, and the plexiglass screens that we had to put up. So that's sort of probably a fairly average cost, depending on whether people were open for operations or not.
Yeah, that's great, Marina, to add that context. I know in our case as well, one of the challenges is that the costs of PPE are actually rising, and it's fluctuated a little bit over the last 4 months. So yeah, so I think it's a lot of us as independent agencies have our own responsibilities versus what the city is providing to you know, our healthcare providers. I saw Linda's hand up. Linda?
Hi, and just for some context, I think that there isn't necessarily a funding source for all agencies that will supplement the costs of PPE. So for example, and I was going to ask Marina, did you have access to any other funding to do that? And I know our agency is really, really small, and so the costs so far have not been massive, and we're not currently seeing clients face to face. So I'm sure those will rise. And we're fully ministry funded by the by Children, Community and Social Services, and they've been very clear that at this point there's not extra funding to supplement those costs, that there's an assumption that we're going to find other ways to make that up. And so, for example, under our travel budget line, not a lot of travel going on right now, and so we're okay right now, but it doesn't necessarily balance out other costs like that arise because of crises that we have to be looking at. So even funded agencies could be facing some real challenges around the costs of PPE, let alone our unfunded agencies that count on other ways of accessing funding. So that was just context. Thanks.
Yeah, so we have not received any additional funding to support that. And similar to you, the Ministry of Health has advised that we shall try to figure out other resources, cost savings wherever. And to Amy's point, just one very glaring increase. Obviously, you know, being in healthcare, we do use isolation gowns for certain visits now for all face-to-face visits. And when this started, they were $7 for 5 of them. Now they're $7.50 a piece.
Yeah. Thank you. That's great context. I'm sure that helps to further answer Councillor Ashmore's question. I wondered if, Councillor Dunn, were you trying to get in a question?
No. I guess I'm just waiting to see what our bill is, and then I'm trying to figure out how in the heck we're going to coordinate the payments. That's my biggest concern. But no, I'm certainly hearing everything you're saying and understanding it.
Okay. I just kept seeing your phone image go green, so I wasn't sure if you were deliberately trying to get in there.
No, not at all. No.
Okay, good. If I might just add a bit of an addendum to Marina's update from the GAPS assessment team. I know I really look forward to seeing that list of 11, Brenda. because I have had some commitments from people that I have encouraged to fulfill the survey. And, but I didn't, it wasn't they know the deadline is August 21st. So some people will, will certainly work to a deadline. But I think it is a good opportunity for us to kind of rally our troops again on the gaps assessment group, to really divide up that list and make sure that we're getting out to all the agencies with reminders, even if we don't have a relationship. So we can do that by email with the gaps assessment group. I also wanted to share with this group, the task force today, that I have been able to make contact with the Kawartha Lakes Sports and Recreation Council, and Dennis Geelan has promised to share the survey with their members, and in fact is doing a workshop with a number of their members this week, and to talk about the it was their gaps, their needs, just some of the issues that they are facing, so that they can get to a consistent return to play guideline. So that's the intention of the Kawartha Lakes Sports and Recreation Council. And Dennis has offered to make a presentation to this task force or to our gaps assessment working group, whatever we think would be appropriate. So he would happily share the results of that engagement. So I just wanted to kind of canvass the task force members to see if that's a presentation that you would like to add to our next meeting.
Sounds good to me.
Okay, I'm seeing some thumbs up, some nods, and we have Councillor Ashmore. That's great. Okay, so I will share the meeting date with Dennis so that we can get that in his calendar. And probably just because it's more official, he did send me an email, myself and Heather, so I suppose that should be correspondence that is entered into the record for this task group to be official. So I will maybe read that out, but I'll share it with Brenda, who's taking our minutes, but I'll read that out when we get to correspondence, if that's all right. Okay. So we do need a motion to accept the gaps assessment working group update. And we have Councillor Richardson. Do we have a seconder? Was that
I'll second it.
done?
Yep.
Okay. So seconded by Councillor Dunn, and so all in favor?
Yeah.
Great. Thank you very much. Okay, so we're on to item 8, which is the engagement strategy. Now we've had an update from Brenda, which is fantastic. Is there anything else that task group members would like to raise at this time in terms of engagement? Yes, Brenda?
We did send out a press release talking about the focus areas for the task force. So I believe that went out just before the long weekend or just after, but in that timeline there to encourage people to check out the meetings on YouTube and for organizations to fill out the survey and talk about the focus groups that, the focus areas that we're looking at.
Thank you. Is there anything else? I think Councillor Dunn, you had an opportunity, I believe, to present at a meeting about what we were doing. Was that the seniors group?
No, the only one I've talked to about our work so far is the chess fund, because they reached out to me because they wanted to be involved and they wanted to help.
Oh, I'm sorry. You know what? It was Councillor Elmsley. Yes.
Okay. Right.
Okay. Sorry about that. Marina?
I was just going to say it was Councillor Elmsley that spoke to them.
Okay. Nothing else under engagement strategy at this time then? Okay. So we'll carry on to new business. Is there anything that any of the members wish to raise as new business? No, seeing and hearing none.
I had one, just, if I could. I just noticed that, like, in our council meetings, we don't have the minutes of the economic task force and our task force here. They don't come to, just because I was told because they're a task force, they don't come to council as minutes. So I just personally felt that kind of, I don't know, it didn't prioritize it as much. And I felt that we should be having these minutes come to the council table just to be received. So that was just my thought, but I guess I wasn't really in the majority, but I mean, it was never voted on, but I kind of think that these minutes should be coming to council just to be received at least. So it gets out there in the public more. I know the minutes are put on the website, but like a lot of committees, most committees, they come to council, the regular council meeting to be received, like their minutes. So that's what I was wondering, if that could be possible. But I guess that's kind of a question for the clerk, I guess.
Brenda seems to have a comment on that. So let's.
Thanks. The minutes don't go to council, but there is an update at every council meeting from Rod Sutherland as a memo to update on the work of the task force. There's also one that comes for the Economic Recovery Task Force. Because they are task forces, council does not need to procedurally approve the minutes, which is why they don't show up under minutes. But in order to keep everyone informed, that's why the memos go at each meeting.
So Brenda, the next memo, and I have seen, I think I saw the previous one. So the next memo would go, I'm sorry, when's the next council meeting?
20th August, Thursday, next Thursday.
So what's the best, so Rod's been developing those memos, and I know he has in the past sent them to Heather and I as co-chairs before they're finalized. Is there anything that the task force, is there anything we want to make sure is in the next memo? Would you be comfortable just with a summary of the minutes in that memo form? With that, do you think, Councillor Ashmore, that will sufficiently get the information out there?
Yeah, just a memo of some sort. I don't think Rod was at the last council meeting, but it would just kind of, I don't know, I just felt that it was kind of, I wouldn't say ignored, but I mean, it was just, there was no mention of it. And, we're doing lots of work here, and there was no recognition or any talk about it. We talk about other things, but these two committees should be talked about a lot more, and they should be out in the public more, and they should be talking about it at council. But yeah, something is better than nothing. Like a memo would be good.
Well, I think at some point there might be an opportunity. I mean, at some point we have to produce recommendations for council. So at that time, there'd be an opportunity to speak to those recommendations, I assume, which either falls to the co-chairs or perhaps other members of the task group. But we're obviously not going to we're not ready for that for the next council meeting, but that could also be an opportunity, Councillor, to raise the profile.
Yeah, like that's the key, raising the profile, because I think the profile needs to be raised, and that's just my opinion. Because I think it's time sensitive more than anything. These two committees, especially ours, like it should be time sensitive, and it should be out in the open, and we should be getting the message out there, because now it's time people need the help, and we need the people to participate. It's not so much for council, it's for the public in general to hear updates. I mean, they read things in the paper here and there, but I mean, it doesn't hurt to have it at council as well.
Yes, Brenda?
Well, perhaps Councillor Ashmore, you can update in the notices from council that the survey closes on the 21st. So if there's a meeting on the 20th,
right, yeah, I can do that.
Remind organizations to fill that out. That would be great.
Yeah, okay, I'll make that announcement. Okay, yeah, during announcements.
Can I ask a question? Does each counselor tend to have, I know I see some, I'm on some counselors' updates through various means, but I'm just wondering, is there a fairly standard level of engagement of from each counselor to their constituents about what's happening?
Not traditionally. Generally, as far as our announcements go, we talk about what's coming up. So if there was something significant happening at the fairgrounds, for example, then Patty O'Reilly would like to probably stand up and say, on the 14th of August we're going to be having a big horse show and stuff like that. So we announce things that are coming up. This is but as far as a counselor standing up and saying, in my ward I dealt with 4 noisy dogs complaints, and there's a couple of neighborhood complaints and that type of thing, and this is how they were dealt with, or we got complaints on roads and potholes. That's not the traditional use of the announcement phase. Absolutely doesn't mean it can't be. It's just not. It's not what I've noticed over the time. Councillor Riley quite often does more announcements than most people do, because he does announcements, so people go to him and they say, would you announce this? So, or if it's a generic announcement, he'll have a whole list of stuff he does. And many of the councillors in the announcement phase, myself included, don't do it very often. But it's our time, so we can do whatever we want with that time.
I usually announce 1 or 2 things at council, and then I also have a newsletter that I put out. I sent out to 5,000 newsletters this spring, and they're mailed out. I do that once a year, so at least once a year. So, and I'm also on Facebook, which for the last year, I think it's helped out a lot and got pretty good exposure. Just about every day or every other day, whatever I'm doing or something like that, I'll put it out. And I'm on Twitter too, but don't get as much on Twitter, but it's still I do use it. So there's 4 main things that I use, and then personal connection with constituents. That's another thing. I mean, on the phone too. So you're on the phone a lot, and you're emailing.
Councillor,
and I have a website. Okay.
Yeah,
That's
Councillor Richardson wanted to add.
Were you specifically talking about social media looping or any other?
Well, I was talking about more when you're trying to get information out to your constituents through whatever means. So the newsletter of Councillor Ashmore's is a great example, but just once a year, and the other social media examples. So yeah, that's what I was talking about.
So we can do another push and maybe reach out to the other councillors to see if we can do another loop too.
Yeah, I think that would be very helpful if whatever means that each councillor has to share information with those that follow them, whether it's social media or anything more immediate, obviously, than an annual newsletter. So something more immediate, if you could share the information about the survey, I think that could help our responses. And if it was helpful, we could, I think everybody received what Holly sent us all, sort of standard language. So just using that standard language, that would be great.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. It's a tool that council hasn't traditionally used, but in this particular case, just to make an announcement telling people to go on the website and look, I think it's something that might resonate, because there are groups out there that need help, and there's lots that don't. They're receiving they have a good solid base of government funding, and they're doing fine, but there's lots of certainly the smaller organizations that are just sort of getting by, and making an announcement at council certainly wouldn't hurt.
Okay, Marina.
Just a reminder to be cautious that it is just for agencies, so that we don't have community members at this point. There will be an opportunity, but not at this time. And that we only want 1 per agency or organization, so that we won't get varying information.
Yeah, very good point, Marina. Thank you. Okay, so Well, that's great. We have, I'll also commit to just checking back with Rod when he's back from holidays about the memo if he doesn't reach out to me before I get to him, in terms of what memo is going to council on August 20th. And okay, so on to item 10, roundtable discussion, which is kind of where we've been at already, but is there anything any members of the group would like to raise at this time in the roundtable discussion? Yes.
I guess not.
Tracy's joining us on roundtable.
Roundtable, absolutely. I just was wondering if any of you had had any communication from the Ontario Trillium Foundation last week when they made that announcement.
I can speak to that, Tracy. We did get that information. Haven't had a personal contact or anything, but just from their newsletter. And so I know the club will be looking at the OTF opportunities, and I've also shared it with the Kawartha Lakes Arts Council group that I'm part of for a project that KLAC has been looking at. And I think it's clear that they have they're definitely going to kind of reprioritize their typical funds. So it's I think you're speaking about the seed and grow grants that typically they provide. Yeah. So it's some different parameters, quicker timelines. And so there are definitely some opportunities there. And I do believe I sent it to Heather for the funding task force, I believe. So hopefully it got onto their agenda as well.
Well, I thought it was worth mentioning, especially if this is, live on YouTube, somebody watching might pick up on that and can link in and, get the updates.
Yeah, for sure. And it's helpful to note too that OTF, they always have on their correspondence that, if you want to talk to a program advisor in your area, that you can set up a call with them. And I've been on one of those calls for KLAC in May, and it was very, very helpful. So it's one of those things that people should take advantage of if they plan to apply to the Ontario Trillium Foundation, because they have very specific outcomes that they're looking for. And unless you choose, I have seen an example where right from the outset, the application was not set up properly because they chose the wrong outcome that the OTF didn't feel applied to what this organization was trying to do. So a call in advance might have prevented that. So definitely something that people should take a look at. Is there anything else for the roundtable? Okay, not at this time. All right, so we'll move on to correspondence. And as I said, I just wanted to officially read the correspondence from Dennis Elan. Let me just find it again, sorry. And then I will send it so that Brenda can enter it into our minutes. So it was written to Heather and I as co-chairs. He had received, he just noted that he'd received the email that I had sent to KLSRC about the survey. Said a bit late, but hopefully not too late. This coming Wednesday, the 12th, I am facilitating a discussion with several sports and rec providers in the city to discuss needs, gaps, and ultimately determining consistent return to play guidelines. I was wondering if the findings from these discussions would be good to share at one of your upcoming task force meetings. I could represent KLSRC at the meeting. So I have replied to Dennis that I would raise that today at our task force meeting. And so I'll report back to him that we'd like to hear from him at our next meeting. And then as I say, I'll just send that to Brenda for the minutes of today's meeting. Is there anything else under correspondence? No. Okay. So that moves us on to item 12, which is just to note that our next meeting is on Monday, August 24th at 10 a.m. And that will be chaired by Heather Kirby if she's available as the other co-chair. And so we'll see you all then. I just need a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Thank you, Councillor Ashmore, I think, or was that Dunn or Ashmore?
Yeah.
I'll second it.
Brenda knows who it was. She recognizes the voices better than I do. Okay, thank you, everybody. Have a great day.
Thank you.
You
Take
too.
care.
Bye-bye.